soft place to walk.
There, in the movie where Grok comes from, a stranger in from a strange land, or stranger in a strange land, the grass in that science fiction is actually in living rooms, and the grass likes you walking on it, so it's kind of fun. But so then you got rocks. Rocks, well, we don't really think of rocks as persons at all, so that's not an issue. So if we go back to David Hume and we think about what a persistent self is, I'm sure David Hume did not get into all of this, but today we argue over what a person is. But whether you're a persistent self, that's an interesting problem. Because if it's dependent on our memory of ourselves and our memory fails us, then we can't trust it. Worse, science says there's a cause and effect, and I can do tests and run experiments, and you know, I keep doing the same experiment over again, and each time I do it, you end up getting the same result. So therefore, this causes that. And the answer, according to Hume, is, well, wait a minute. If I'm shooting a cue stick at an 8 ball, the cue ball, I aim, take the shot, 8 ball goes into the pocket, perfect shot. Set it up again, do the same thing, perfect shot. How many times do you want to do it? Perfect shot, perfect shot. If you're a pool shark, you practice that every day to make sure your skills are up to date so that you can act well and win games and so on. But imagine this. Line up, cue ball, take the shot. Cue ball's heading towards the 8 ball, and the 8 ball goes, woohoo, you can't get me, and jumps up in the air. And the cue ball goes underneath it and goes, hey, you can't do that. It falls into the pocket, scratch. Does that ever happen? It has, actually, in a tune. If you've seen Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where there's like live action and it merges with the tune. Nobody knows the movie.
Oh yeah.
Oh well.
Hot minute.
Come on. Isn't that just Rabbit?
We can imagine this happening, says David Hume. Now, obviously, he never saw that movie, nor did he have any conception that movies will ever be made. But nonetheless, he said we can imagine something else happening, and if we can imagine something else happening, then it's not a contradiction for the opposite to happen to what we think must happen. And if that's the case, it's not logically necessary for the effect to follow the cause. It's just, as a matter of fact, necessary, because that's the way it has always happened in our memory. But remember, again, our memories can fool us. We might be wrong.
Especially if our imagination affects our memory.
And when you get to that, we've seen so many movies where so many impossible things happen that we do worry about children growing up and thinking you could actually do these kinds of things, even though physically they're not possible to do. Just think of all the different fiction where you've got magic and you've got all kinds of people flying, Superman. Just think about all the different things that have corrupted our perception of reality so that we think all kinds of things are possible, God bless you, when in fact they're not.
Like eating spoonfuls of cinnamon?
Never
Sorry.
tried that.
Sorry.
Sounds about as bad as eating the spice from Dune. Which is totally imaginary.
Actually, that'd be more like eating mushrooms.
So cause and effect. We can't trust cause and effect. As a result of David Hume's critique of cause and effect, by the way, scientists don't actually say they've proved anything. Good scientists don't say they've proved anything. Instead, they talk about our current hypothesis. And that's because they've stopped saying they've actually proved something, because David Hume has proven that you can't prove anything.
I mean, it sounds good, like I like that.
You know, the odd thing is, in a way, thanks to David Hume doing that, we've ended up in a world where scientists actively consider any scientific belief as another proposition to test, to see if you can't outdo it somehow. So we even have the expression, from funeral to funeral, science progresses. So everyone comes up with a theory. As soon as they have this new theory and it's out there, everybody is reading about this hypothesis. By the way, strictly speaking, a theory is neither true nor false. A theory is like a story. Even evolution, it's evolutionary theory. So if someone argues evolution is true, that's the same as saying that I believe this book is true, or I believe this religion is true. What is that person actually saying? They're not saying that this sentence and this sentence and this, no, what, these are true sentences? No, they're not saying that. They're not saying this argument is valid. They're not saying that. They're saying, I believe this narrative is the legitimate way for me to live. This is what I really like and trust is a good way of life. I really like the theory of evolution, says the biologist. Really like it. Okay, but strictly speaking, a theory is neither true nor false. It's a hypothesis. An interpretation of this statement is true, is this cell is this kind of cell, this cell is this kind of cell, this cell is different. Okay, how did that happen? Now why invent? It evolved. It's not really any different than saying there was a miracle. It's not my fault. I'm just trying to relay to you the problems that David Hume caused. And David Hume caused these problems, and not just those. There's other ones like this. Well, this sweatshirt's not really a good example because it's not just one color. Your sweatshirt's excellent. Your sweatshirt is black. Okay. So, and your top, it's not a sweatshirt, is black. Yours is blue. You have a blackish kind of vest, right? What makes that black and that black and that black the same? David's got a black shirt. What makes all the blacks in the various clothing the same color?
Because they're not glossy, they're all matte. I don't know.
It's just the name.
Perception?
See the color?
That we're trying to do.
We all see the same color, right?
Allegedly.
Yeah,
Thank you for that,
glasses,
yes.
I'm not gonna see the same color.
Very good point. As I perceive it,
Perception, yeah.
my perception is all that counts. It looks black, 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 blue. Really, right? Well, what makes me think all of those black colors, those black perceptions, are black?
The schemes you set up in your mind of what black is.
The color black looks the same in all those places.
I got 4 different colors of black on my truck.
Well, Hume points out that if what I'm saying is something exists in 4 places at once, that's logically impossible. The same thing cannot exist in 4 places at once because, well, it can't be in 4 places at once. So, okay, well then, David Hume, the patterns of light that bounce off of them affect my receptors exactly the same way, and as a result, I think they're all black. Aha! So what causes the patterns of light to reflect off of them all the same way? They all have exactly the same arrangement of particles. Okay, so you're saying that all 4 of those things that you think of as black have exactly the same arrangement of the same things in all 4 places. In other words, the same exact thing has to exist in all 4 places. But that's impossible. The same thing can't exist in 2 places at once. This is pre-quantum
I
mechanics.
was about to say that's wrong. Okay.
Yeah. But no, okay, you keep digging yourself a hole because you keep trying to explain why similar things, are identical. Identity, right? Identical colors, identical things. Why do we say that they're the same? Well, because we think that there's the exact same something at whatever level that causes exactly the same result. But logically, it's impossible for the exact same thing. That's the issue, right? The exact same thing can't be in multiple places at once. So basically, thank you, David Hume. Not only do we not know what a person is, or a persistent person, and we don't know cause and effect anymore, but I can't also explain why it is that certain things look identical. Why color persists. I did a whole term paper on that, by the way, in college. How things could
Are you
actually.
sure you did that?
That's mean, but you're right. How do I know I did that? I actually still have the paper copy at home in my garage. So,
Was
And
Hume
what
a
is the
nihilist?
best way?
so David Hume critiques Berkeley's idea that God is keeping everything all there. He says, how do you know that? And he doesn't. So David Hume becomes the skeptic of skeptics. By the way, he was also an official atheist. And in our history of philosophy up to this point, he's the first one that is considered a modern atheist. Despite that, he actually applied to teach at the seminary in Edinburgh. And people pointed out to him, hey, you're an atheist. We're not going to hire an atheist to teach at the seminary. That's just dumb. He was miffed because they didn't hire him. They did finally hire him to be the head librarian, though, of the school library. So he got a job. He actually had quite an interesting career. Lots of different things. The Bonnie David. And he picks up where Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, George Berkeley, and then David Hume. So he follows along with this whole idea that all of our information comes in through our senses, and that's the only thing that enables us to know things. And of course, he adds this extra dimension that we can only know what we're experiencing at the moment. And as a result, all that other stuff that we thought was knowledge is doubtful. In fact, this is a critique of cogito ergo sum by Descartes. Descartes, remember, says, I think, therefore I am. Aha, well, David Hume says, you think therefore you are, right now. How do you know that that's the same person that's still sitting on the bar stool, looking at, the young lady and saying, do I come here often? It's because they're old and they don't remember if they've been there before. Sorry. I have, these are called dad jokes. Can you read it?
The bottom part we can't read.
Oh, well, I don't want to go there.
What does it say?
It says, I keep my dad jokes in a dad-a-base.
I love that.
I found this t-shirt in my closet this morning. I don't remember ever having it. I don't know where the heck it came from. So the quiz question for David Hume is, if a tree falls in the forest and there's nobody there to hear it, does it make a sound? This is strictly speaking the quiz question for next class. Strictly speaking, I haven't really started diving into David Hume yet. But if you think about it, John Locke says, absolutely it's the same tree. And yes, it made a sound, even though no one was there to hear it. I think that's what John Locke would say. George Berkeley says, yes, it's the same tree, and yes, it makes a sound because God heard it. David Hume, I think, would say, what tree? So that stupid question is actually a real philosophical question that, of course, by the way, if I didn't ask you that question, you probably could get your money back. Because that's the kind of question you expect to get in a philosophy course. And everybody has heard that question. Is this fun? I also have an interesting take on Berkeley that connects him to Leibniz. Remember, Leibniz has the monadology, where everything is not particles of matter, but instead are like souls. Berkeley is going to say that everything doesn't consist of matter, but consists of the mind perceiving things. And of course, he argues that it's God's mind that's keeping it all together. Both of them will say that this creates a complete harmony of the universe, where so there's no argument, following Sir Isaac Newton, that the planets are being held by gravity. Which, by the way, gravity is really mysterious. This is a mysterious force. You can't measure it, actually. Can't see it. And in fact, they don't really know what might cause it. What actually causes mass is the new particle that the Higgs boson that they found, that for some reason gives all the particles mass, right? But mass isn't gravity. And notice that your phone isn't slowly inching towards you because of the heavy mass of Brandon sitting across from his phone. It's doesn't seem to work that way, right? Can't measure gravity that way. Remember that the fun thesis that Einstein gives us is that the Earth is accelerating in a direction that's slightly different than the direction that you're accelerating in, and as a result, the Earth is accelerating your butt in the chair. That's why you feel the gravity. It's because of the acceleration of the Earth pushing on you by that little bit, right? And that's because for Einstein, there's no such thing as gravity. You argue, well, if the sun, what blew up, how long before we would know it? 8 seconds? 8 minutes? 8 minutes, right?
Had to grow first.
Pardon?
Has to grow first.
don't know. It has never happened, so we don't really know.
What happened to Venus?
I don't know. Well, you get the idea. There's problems. Gravity doesn't seem to really exist. It's a mysterious force that Newton invented, which a lot of people don't believe in, including Berkeley and Leibniz. They argue that the reason everything stays in orbit and everything else is because of the mind of God and the perfect harmony that everything wants to follow. Kind of like Aristotle. Aristotle thought things fell because they wanted to move to that other place.
Why can't they say that gravity is also the mind of God? Like, it seems to me like the philosophers argue about words a lot. And rather than
When we get to Wittgenstein says that the whole reason you have all these philosophical problems is because of misunderstanding language.
I agree.
You'll like it.
But it's, language
Except
is,
he's totally unlikable.
Who?
Wittgenstein.
Is it the book that you had earlier? That guy?
Yes, actually.
Well, it seems like languages are blessing and also our curse.